Cosmos Kiindarius, and I'm a director-producer who also writes. I've been in the industry for about 25 years now. Started on set, spent my whole career on set, came up as a PA and worked in most of the positions that you have in the production side. So I've never been a grip, I've never been a cinematographer, any of those things, but I've been in the art department, I've been in the production coordinator's office, UPM, line producers, all those things. I've done $250 million movies, I've done zero budget movies, and kind of all the things in between. Some of the highlights are I directed a film that won the Audience Choice Award in Taiwan. I produced a film called Blush that was nominated for the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance, and I produced another film called Before the Sun Explodes, which was nominated for a Grand Jury Prize at South by Southwest. So I've been very lucky to have produced and directed films that have been screened and seen and are streaming, and so it's what the job is, right? It's what the dream is to be a full-time filmmaker. One of the things that's going on right now that is hard from the outside, and you know, Michelle and I were talking, it's like you're driving around town and you don't see anything shooting, or like those of you that used to do background work can't find any background work, or those of us that work on set aren't getting calls to work on set. And so a lot of people assume, oh, well, the industry is leaving LA and people are shooting everywhere else. But it's actually a much kind of bigger thing. So I'll start with you guys as writers, because most of the people in this room are writers or coming into production from a script and story perspective. It's still about writing what you want to write. It's still about coming up with story ideas you're passionate about and that you believe in. I think the difference is now your passion and belief are more important than they ever were before, because most likely what's going to happen is you're going to be raising the money, you're going to be finding people to believe in the project, because what's happening is that finished films are what is getting delivered, and then people are buying those finished films. You know, in the old days you would say, well, we're gonna write a script and we're gonna find some cast and we'll set up pre-sales. And pre-sales were the concept of, we'll get some actors, and because these actors are known, we can get some money from other countries and foreign territories, and that'll help us with our production costs. But the world of pre-sales has kind of gone away, and I'll give you guys one of the most recent examples of why they're going away. So a friend of mine runs a very large production company out of the UK, and they're making a movie, and so they're at Cannes in 2024, and they're talking about the movie they're going to be making. They're talking about the cast that they have, they're talking about the special effects they're going to use, and buyers are coming in and saying, we want that, we'll give you this much money, we'll give you that much money. And these are all handshake deals, but they're handshake deals with countries, with large organizations, with people you've been doing business with for 10 to 15 years, and that's the kind of handshake deal that normally you can trust. So the budget was, we'll say $3 million for the sake of this conversation. And Russia says, we're gonna give you 1.5 for this film. And so as a filmmaker, what you do is you go borrow against your pre-sale, and then that's the money that you use to make your film. So Russia's gonna give you 1.5, you go borrow $1.25 million, because that gives you room for that interest, so you're not in the hole, and you go find a way to make your movie. So my friend went and he made his movie, and he's in post-production, and he sees these same Russian buyers at the Berlin Film Festival in February of this year, 2025. And they're like, hey, how's the movie? Oh, it's going great. Oh, we're really excited to see it, and we can't wait to give you $250,000 for that movie. And he says, no, we had a deal for 1.5. And they go, yeah, we know, but we're just gonna give you $250,000 now. And so the thing is that movie is immediately $1 million in the hole. Mm-hmm. And what happened is, from a political perspective, somebody told Russia the war was ending. And since the war with Ukraine broke out, they haven't been able to buy any big movies. They haven't bought any of the Sony films, the Disney films, none of those movies. They've been spending money on small movies because that was a reasonable expense. But now that the war is ending, they can save up their money and start buying big movies again. And they were told that last year in the fall. And so they pulled all their funding for all their independent films, which created between a $300 and $500 million hole in the buying market for independent films. And it's not like there's another country that's gonna show up and fill that gap all of a sudden. And so it's just this giant hole that has to be made up. And all these companies who went out and made films at that price point with that in mind now are scrambling to figure out how to sell their movie. So there's dead zones in the independent world and even in the studio world when it comes to budgets. So your ultra low budget, actually your smallest budget is going to be a micro budget, which is under $50,000. There's a lot of rules to it. You don't want to make a movie like that, don't even bother. The smallest movie you want to even attempt is going to be an ultra low budget, which they've raised is going to be $300,000 or less. And you can make a good movie for that price. You get a pretty good rate. You can get real SAG actors that will come in and they'll do the job because it counts towards their hours and it counts towards their insurance and they're guaranteed on some things. And it's a way for them to make other movies when, you know, their TV show's on hiatus or they just want to try something that no one else will cast them for. Then your next budget level is going to be a modified low budget. And the cap for the modified low budget is $650,000 to $750,000. There's some provisions you can get with diversity and whatnot that actually can get you all the way up to $1 million under the modified low budget. And then your next cap is going to be the low budget, which is $1 million. And then once you get above 1.6, you're just on the SAG basic agreement, the DGA 1 point agreement, the Tier 0 IOPSI agreement, and that's kind of in the regular world of what you're paying to make a movie. And so there was this room between $1 million and $3 million where you could kind of make a movie, have a real crew, have real actors, get everybody paid enough, and you could turn that movie around and turn it into real money. And then everybody gets to make a movie again, and you get to kind of recycle that. Once you got up into the $10 million to $15 million range, it's a complete dead zone where there aren't actors big enough that can move the needle to sell a film to make the money it needs to make back that will do a movie that small. And so basically they said, stay away from anything between 10 and 25 million. It didn't matter what the genre was, it didn't matter who was in it. There was no way to make something like that work. No one could figure it out. That dead zone has dropped all the way, maybe realistically, to like $2 million, where nobody right now knows how to make a movie work. And there's a couple reasons for that. The primary reason is Hollywood is, well, all institutions are slow to change. So they say, well, this is how we've always done it. This is how you do this. This is how it works. It's how my boss did it. It's how his boss did it. It's how we're going to do it. And that's the model of pre-sales and, you know, well, we know you have to have a big opening weekend and all those kinds of things. And why that matters so much is because the gatekeepers are the ones who greenlight the films, and they're all afraid of sort of losing their job. And so they don't want to risk anything. They don't want to stick their neck out anywhere. And we'll talk about that shift, which is a result of COVID, plus the strikes, plus the fires, plus the election, plus the global economy right now, all of which are kind of stacking on top of each other in the strangest of perfect storms. So I'll use a personal story for the tragedy of doing things in the old way. Many of you know the film that I wrote, Dirt. We were going to be making that film last fall. We had Malcolm McDowell cast, we had Heather Langenkamp, we had Owen Vaccaro, we had Emily Tosta, and James Paxton. We had a couple other actors whose names you might not recognize, but I'll tell you that 7 of our top 10 actors were in the top 10,000 on IMDb. And for a film with a sub $2 million budget, that's a pretty good cast. And everyone I went to said, you don't have enough. That won't move the needle. That can't sell your film. So I went to Cannes in 2024. And I went to a producer who I knew well, and I said, hey, I'm pushing all my chips forward. I'm going to make this movie. Let's go out and get somebody that'll help us bank this film. And so I wanted to cast a man named Pilu Asbæk, who, very talented actor. He was in Game of Thrones. He was in Aquaman. He was in a couple of other things. And they're like, he's really good. He loved the script. And I said, this is going to be our guy. This is our star. And I was at Cannes in 2024. And I said, yep, I got Pilu Asbæk, and he's going to be my star. And I'm going to populate the script with other people around him. And I was going to sales agents and distributors, and I was saying, this is who I'm going to go to. And they all said, oh, nobody knows who he is. Nobody cares who he is. He won't open your movie. If you cast him, you've made a mistake. I said, I don't know, he's really good. And he has a big following and he does good in genre. And they said, look, we're the industry. I've been in this industry for 20 years. I've done this for 50 years. You've done this for how long? You're the young filmmaker. We're the business we know. And so we went back to Pilu's people and we said, hey, we can't make this work right now. We're looking forward to working with you in the future, but we're going to look at other people. So we started looking at other cast. The very next week, while I was still at Cannes, Pilu Asbeck was announced as the lead of a $100 million volcano movie. And everybody said, man, if you could get Pilu, you sure would be in luck. But that's how the industry works. They don't know anything until they've read it in the newspaper, the same as you read it in the newspaper. But that's not how movies are made. We have to make them before. So continuing along, I had an opportunity to see a film called Strange Darling. And got to see a preview screening in August. Very interesting film. First time feature film director. It had, two older stars who aren't quite in the zeitgeist, but if you see them, you know them and you love them. It had Barbara Hershey, and it had, I'll think of his name in a moment, another actor that we all kind of know. And then it had some young actors who were kind of up and coming. It had Kyle Gallner, and it had Willa Fitzgerald, who, again, you don't really know their names, but you would see the projects they're in. You're like, okay, I've seen them in some stuff, And so it has two aged actors who sort of have, a nostalgia feel to them, two young and up and coming actors. It has a kind of a strange story, kind of a hybrid of drama and horror, and who knows what this movie is. And a first-time director, a director whose name doesn't carry any weight. And I looked at that film and I said, that's my film. I need two older actors, I need two younger actors. I'm not a first-time director, but my name doesn't carry weight as a director. I have a very strange script. It's kind of a genre blend. I said, what that movie does is what my movie will do. And so I started going to people and I said, watch Strange Darlings, that's what my movie's gonna do. Oh no, that movie's gonna be terrible. I would never tell anyone that your movie's gonna be like that movie, because that movie's gonna die immediately. And the movie opened in theaters in October, and as of June last month, the movie has done 3.1 million domestic box office, 5 million worldwide. So everyone that I said, this movie is gonna do 3 to 5 million, and they said, no, it's not. I now show them the exact numbers I basically said it would do, and they're like, wow, that's interesting. But there's no recognition of, oh, maybe you were onto something, or maybe we could listen to a filmmaker, or maybe somebody else might know something that we don't know. The other thing that came along with that is that guy, Pilu Asbeck, that was gonna be the lead of my film. He's number 9 on IMDb right now. Of all actors, all filmmakers in the world, he's in the top 10. And that's the person who would have been in my little film. So the idea that my film might do a little bit better than 3 to 5 isn't that far-fetched. When I had a slightly stronger cast with two older actors who were still in the zeitgeist. Heather Langenkamp was Nancy in the original Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Then she was on Just the 10 of Us. But she's been working the last 40 years, and currently she is still doing horror. She's one of Mike Flanagan's lead actors, and Mike Flanagan is Netflix's horror thriller guy. He does House of Usher, he did The Midnight Supper Club, right? So that's who they go to for their horror. And so in the genre space, she carries a lot of weight, and people would love to go see a genre movie that she's in. Malcolm McDowell is genre royalty. You see him in a movie, you're like, yeah, I want to go see that. Oh, he's in a scary movie? I definitely want to go see that. And so we had these available to us. And the other major difference between our film and Strange Darling was a $4 million budget. I was a $1.4 million budget. So if we had made the 5 million, we would have tripled our money, whereas they barely broke even. So now I'm very, very lucky because there were some people who were interested in coming in and financing films who met me about a year ago, and they didn't have their money yet. They said, oh, we're putting together a film fund, and we're just here trying to see how this all goes. You seem interesting, what are you working on? And so I've been in touch with these guys for about a year now. And for about a year, I've been giving them all the updates. Yep, I wanted to get this actor, but they said no. I said I would do this much, but they didn't believe me. And a lot of the things that I said a year ago are now sort of coming to fruition. So it's been great because to them I'm Nostradamus, and they're like, well, you seem to know what you're talking about. Why don't we back you? Why don't we do what you want to do and do it the way that you want to do it. But even that, you run into a different set of problems, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's the primary thing going on in the industry is filmmakers, it's not about California doesn't have a tax credit, right? It's not about that, it's about we need a place for films to go. And the thing that's missing, I think I saw one laying around here, is the DVD market. DVDs and VHS were one of the highest money makers for films. And that all went away when we stopped making those. And so streaming isn't the ancillary market that it was, and theatrical has always been a loss leader, but it's really good marketing. And that's what people are learning now. That's why you're gonna see films going back into theaters. They're going into the theater because if people saw that it was in the theater, even though they didn't go see it in the theater, they're more likely to watch it on streaming. And so you can get a bigger number for your film on streaming. And so people are tackling it in a variety of ways. And I'm gonna put a pin in that. I'm gonna go back to the industry as a whole. So obviously everybody's familiar with COVID. I'm gonna gloss over that. But what was going on for the industry was, well, it's gonna be a couple months, it's gonna be a couple weeks, let's just shut down, we'll develop stuff, it'll be fine. And then they end up developing projects for 2 years. So they're developing and buying scripts and developing and buying scripts, but nothing's getting made. And then they just have a backstock and a backstock and backstock. So now they have all these projects they've developed. And then they're like, okay, well, we need to start shooting. And then there was what we would call the second wave of COVID where they still couldn't shoot. And now they're like, well, we don't need to develop anything else because we have a warehouse full of things and we can't shoot anything right now. So what should we do? Let's start acquiring stuff. So they started laying off all the development people, which was that first wave of Hollywood jobs that kind of went away with all the development people. And we started seeing the rise of shows from Spain and shows from South Korea coming in because they were shows that were already done. All you had to do was buy them, put subtitles on them, and you could give a new product to an audience. And it kind of taught audiences to look at subtitles, which a lot of people didn't want to do before. And now you have people watching subtitles in English, let alone in foreign languages while they're watching their product. So the industry says, okay, we're okay. The other thing that is not very wide known is that there's no financial provision for a pandemic. There's no tax code, there's no write-off. It's not something that you can really brace for. But there is one for strikes. And so as the strikes started to come and the industry was getting ready to start ramping things up, they're like, well, wait a minute, what if the strike actually happens? Let's wait. And so they slow rolled going into production. Then when the strike hit, somebody at a bunch of places, all at the same time, had the brilliant idea, wait a minute, we can write off all of our COVID losses by trying to push all of our films that we developed into production right now. Oh no, there's a strike. Oh no, look at all this money that we lost. And so they were able to write off the losses from COVID, which isn't a conspiracy, it's not a plan, it's business people figuring out how to stay afloat. I don't fault anybody for that. But then afterwards, they couldn't then go back into those projects because they were all these dead projects. They're too old, they don't apply anymore, we don't like that anymore, that's no longer popular, that's been canceled, we don't even know who that person is anymore, whatever the reason is. And viewing had changed. I'm not talking about TikTok and Instagram and those kinds of things, just the way that we watch everything has changed. And so the industry was like, well, what are we gonna do now? How do we figure this out now? And so that's what this year, coming 2024, was gonna be. Okay, we finally figured it out. We're on the other side of the strikes. We've got some really fresh stuff. We've paid for it quite a bit. We're gonna go into this hard charging. And people just kind of wrote off 2023. I wanna say as early as November. I was at AFM and it was a very light AFM. The fact that it was in Vegas didn't help, but it was a struggling sort of market. And it's because people were like, they just wanted to be done. Let's come back in January, everything will be better. People were worried about the elections in the United States. People were worried about the elections overseas because those affect us well when it comes to this kind of business. So I said, let's just take a pause and wait and see. Because investors, they know that if one of the candidates won, they would put their money in this place and then invest in film. If the other candidate won, they'd put their money in this place and then invest in film. But they still needed to know where to put the rest of their money. It wasn't about do we put money into film, it was about how do we position everything else. So they all just kind of put a pause. And then the end of December, people started ramping up, and there were a lot of conversations, there were a lot of phone calls, there were a lot of new film funds that had been built up over all the money that hadn't been spent over the end of the year that people had that they wanted to get off their books before July of the next year. And then LA had the fires. And the fires affected the industry in a very strange way that people don't really account for. A lot of people lost their homes, a lot of people, I get that piece. Those kinds of tragedies happen all the time, all over the world, let alone all over the country. The difference is, this was a concentration of people who run an industry, who are no longer thinking about how to run an industry or what we were gonna do or what the infrastructure was. There was one of the companies I was working with, they lost 9 homes in their board of directors. And it's a lot to try to recover and then call that person the next week and say, yeah, I know you lost your house, but let's get back to work. So then we had the first major festival of the year, Sundance, and Sundance was a flop. There were no good films, there was nothing really happening, and it's because of this struggling, limping industry. So much that Sundance has now left Utah, it's gonna be in Colorado now.
It's what?
It's in Colorado, it's in Boulder.
Oh.
It's no longer in Utah.
Oh.
Because when Sundance lost Robert Redford, it sort of lost its mystique and its value. Just like when Tribeca lost Robert De Niro, it lost its mystique and value. Yes, it's still a festival. Yes, it's still in New York, but you just don't go for the same reasons anymore. And the big deals aren't happening out of the way they used to be. So the deals start happening just at the markets, just in Berlin. And so Berlin was this really big marker where people are like, what are we gonna do? How's the industry gonna go? Should we be excited or should we be terrified? And then we have a lot of people getting the news on Russia, which we've already discussed. So that kind of got scary. So it's a lot of doom and gloom. I was in the UK in March and I met with my friend who told me about his movie not getting funded the way it should have been. And he looked at me and he said, you know, Cosmos, you're in a really lucky place because something you've always been really good at is making a very small movie look very big. And he said, if I were you, I would lean into that because we have no idea what we're doing and it's gonna take us at least 2 years to figure it out. And while we're figuring that out, you could be putting out really good product and then people will follow that model. And so in March, I started developing a new model of how to make films in this environment, in this, sort of world that we're currently in. And it's not that I've reinvented the wheel in any way, but I just looked at all of the traditional things that we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go talk to a sales agent and ask them, what's the value of this cast I'm going for? And if the cast isn't valuable according to that sales agent, then I have to dump that cast and I've got to go to somebody else. Well, the problem is movies don't come out for a year, 18 months sometimes. What if that person is no longer valuable? What if that person's been canceled? What if that person's who knows what? And that happens all the time. But we have those movies like Strange Darlings that don't quite have who you think it's gonna have in it, and yet it gets made, and yet it comes out, and it does pretty good for a film that nobody believed in. And so I said, there's gotta be a way to emulate that. So personally, what I've shifted to and what I'm doing is, I'm making small films for 100% equity upfront. I'm telling the investor, give me the equity, I'm gonna go make a movie. You don't get to tell me who's in it. I'm not gonna ask any sales agents who to put in it. I'm just gonna go make a really good movie because there isn't any product. There's nothing for buyers to look at. There's nothing for them to put out. And I'll tell you the advantage of how I'm doing it. So we have tax credits. What a lot of filmmakers do is they pre-sale their tax credit or they cash flow their tax credit. So I'm gonna use Panama as an example for simplicity's sake. You're making a movie in Panama, you get a 25% tax credit. So what you do is you say, I'm making a $650,000 movie, I'm gonna go borrow $162,000 from someone because that's my 25% tax credit. So they give you money, now what they usually give you is 80 cents on the dollar if you're lucky, 70 cents on the dollar, right? Because they have to make money. So you don't really get your full 25%. And then what they do is 6 months, 9 months, 1 year later when the tax credit is released, it just goes straight to them instead of going to you because you signed it over to them. So they do it, they invest in that way because it's guaranteed money to them. So it's a very safe investment. And so when you're raising money, everyone will ask you, First question, who's banking your tax credit? Because that's the money everybody wants. Because it's government money, they know they're going to get it. It's the safest investment. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to make a film for $650,000, and I'm not going to count the tax credit. So I get my $650,000, I go and I make my film. Now I earned that $162,000 25% tax credit, but I don't owe it to anybody. That's money that the film has, that's technically equity. So what I can do with that money is I can give it back to my investor. Now, before the film's even done or released, they've already made back 25% of what they've put into this film. So they're feeling a lot more comfortable. But here's the other advantage that it gives me. When you borrow against stuff, obviously we all know loans, you pay interest. Well, when I borrow against this film and I go to Berlin and I try to sell the film in Berlin and nobody gives me the offer that I want, I'm stuck. Okay, I'm not getting the offer that I want. What do I do? Well, usually you wait for a better offer, which means you're going to wait from Berlin to Cannes, which is 3 months. So you're going to pay 3 months of interest on all this money that you have out. It can cost you $300,000 to wait that 3 months, depending on your deals. So now the deal that wasn't so good in Berlin really isn't good in Cannes. And if you don't get a better deal in Cannes, what do you do then? Do you wait till TIFF? Do you wait till September? Do you wait till AFM in November? Do you wait a calendar year till the next Berlin? Because you're losing money. And so it puts filmmakers under a lot of pressure, a self-imposed pressure of I've got to make a decision in that scarcity place. So the thing is I'm not under that pressure. One, because I don't have any interest-bearing loans against what I've made. I made a film with equity. But the other part is this. If somebody offers me, we'll say $500,000 for my movie in Berlin, and then I wait till Cannes, if someone offers me $500 in Cannes, it's the same $500 I was offered in Berlin. I haven't lost anything. I've lost 3 months of releasing the film, but who cares? I haven't lost any actual money. But the advantage that I have is I can sell the film for less than my actual budget, and my investor's made back 100% of his money. I don't even have to make my budget back. And so the thing is that when the sales agents are looking at it, they're like, oh, this is a good movie. How much do you need? And they're waiting for some astronomical number. And they think that, because they usually have us over a barrel, that they can tell us whatever they want. We're like, yeah, you want to buy it? Oh my God, yes. We'll say yes. Because it's always sort of that kind of a market. And this is a way to put some level of power back into the filmmaker's hands. So I say these things, and I've been talking about this for a couple months now with quite a few people, and I took this plan to Cannes 2025, and people were really excited about what I had to say. And so there are some companies that are saying, hey, Cosmos, we like what you're doing. We'll match funds on any film you make. So they'll do dollar for dollar on anything I have, and it's a dollar for dollar equity, and it's not interest bearing, so it keeps the same model. And so there are ways to continue to get films made, to get your stuff out there. However, you have to be willing to go against what all of the supposed experts are telling you until they start turning around. Some of you talked to me last year about Cannes, and I said they've lost their minds, and they're gonna have to wait till they get another 1.5 years of no's from filmmakers like me before they'll change their minds. And I'll give you 2 examples. So there was a film last year, 2024, that they were trying to sell for $1 million. And they had a buyer, but the buyer only wanted to pay $600. And so in traditional negotiations, that means you guys meet at $800, and everybody goes home and we've made a deal. But the people selling for $1 million didn't want to accept $200,000 less than they wanted. And the people buying for $600 didn't want to buy for $200,000 more than that they had wanted to buy for it. So they don't buy anything, and the film doesn't sell. That film was selling at Cannes in 2025 as well. It's not a better movie than it was last year. It's not worth more, but they're still trying to sell it, and they now have to sell it more. They're now asking $1.5 for it. And they couldn't even get $800,000 for it last year. It's a losing proposition. And because of those losing propositions, we're losing investors. People are like, there's no way to invest. Investing in film is the worst thing you can do. If you want to lose money, that's the way to go. So that was one of the models. The other model was this. I had a film last year I said, I have a film, I need 4 actors. I can get any 4 actors you want me to get. Tell me who to get, I'll go get those actors. And I was given a list by sales agents and distributors. And I said, great, each of these actors costs $1 million. So I'll go get these actors for $1 million each. I'll do the rest of the movie, the rest of the cast, all the below the line, all the locations, everything for another $1 million. If I bring this film back to you at $5 million next year, do we have a deal? And they said, no, we want you to bring it to us for $2 million. And I said, well, you asked me to get 4 actors that cost $1 million each, and you want me to bring you a film for $2 million. How does that work? And this wasn't the exact answer, but the answer was essentially, well, you're smart, you'll figure it out. Because they're coming from a perspective of, we sit in the office and you have to come into our front door and you have to sell us a ware, and we don't have to say yes because we have this office wall behind us, and that makes us important. And it's a really strange prevailing attitude that all of us have experienced in whatever industry we've ever worked in, from our very first job to our most recent job. We've had that experience on some level. In the film industry, though, there's a real opportunity to change the dynamic by being willing to go a different way and sort of strike out in a slightly different way. So you guys, as writers, as people who are looking to get partners or people who are looking to get into production to make your own things, my suggestion is you need to be going to more film festivals. Because at film festivals, you're meeting other people like me, you're meeting other filmmakers who are figuring it out, and they're gonna make it happen anyways. They're gonna shoot on an iPhone, or they're gonna shoot on the camera that they own, or they're gonna shoot on a camera that's 2 years old instead of the camera that came out this year. But they're gonna get product done. And it's interesting, it's exciting for me, because I think we can tell whatever stories we wanna tell, because it's about having a finished product that has been made well. And so the last little bit on that piece before I open to any questions you guys might have, or we turn it over to the screenplay for the night, would be make sure that in circles like this, in rooms like this, you're actually listening to the feedback, because it still has to be a good movie. It's not enough that you worked really hard and you made it and you spent this long on it, because nobody cares, okay? It has to be good. It doesn't have to have stars in it, but it's gotta be good, right? And rooms like this where you're just writing and you have friends and colleagues who are listening to your notes, or listening to your script, giving you notes, that's all free. It doesn't cost any money. You're the only one spending time on this. And that's the least expensive time you will ever have on a film set. Because if you're standing on set and there's 35 people around and it costs you $75,000 a day to be there, that's a problem. You don't want to be standing around figuring something out you could have figured out in your writer's group a long time ago. If you'd listened to the notes you were given, or if you'd asked one more question, you know, I'm not quite sure how to fix this. Does anybody have an idea? Like, that's why I come to this group, and I think that's why a lot of people in this group come to this group. It's why people come, actors and cinematographers and people who understand literature and care about stories. Like, they come to lend their voices and their minds to us. So in coming to this, I think it's important that you take advantage of that, because you're not taking advantage of anybody, you're like accepting the gift that people are offering you. So do you guys have any questions about anything I said or anything I didn't say?
I was struck by, you were talking about that game they played, pushing stuff into COVID.
Yep.
And so those movies are dead because they've been written off, essentially? So
they have to wait a cycle before you can bring them back out. It's not that they're dead. It's not that they'll never get made, but movies that get lost like that tend to be a problem. A really great example is a movie called O, which had Josh Hartnett and the girl from Save the Last Dance, and not Omar Epps.
Yeah.
It was Omar Epps. So it's a telling of Othello.
Julia Stiles.
Yeah, Julia Stiles, thank you. It's a telling of Othello. And it was well done. And all three of them were stars when the film was made. And then Columbine happened. And this was a film about violence in a high school, and so the film got shelved. And the film came out 3 years later, after they'd all grown, after they'd all done other movies, we'd seen them in other films, and all of a sudden this movie comes out with these actors, none of whom looked like they looked the last time we saw them. They all looked too young. It was all kind of strange, and the tone of this movie made 3 years prior just didn't fit anymore. So what happens is somebody wrote something that just really felt like it was in the zeitgeist or something people wanted to be talking about, and now we're 4 or 5 years later. It takes a lot of work to turn it into something that's really worth making, that would work now. So oftentimes it's like, why would we pay more money for that thing? Why not just get someone to start over from scratch? Versus films like The Matrix, which took 10 years to get made. But it was such a unique idea, and the Wachowskis had such a unique vision that it was worth waiting the 10 years. Or Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons, which took 20 years to get made. Originally, it was supposed to be directed by Frank Oz, and it was going to star Tom Cruise right after he had done Days of Thunder. And then I went to David Fincher in the 90s, and he read it and he loved it, and he was like, I don't know how to make this movie. We don't have the technology. Frank Oz was going to use puppets, and he was good at that. David doesn't know puppets. So he called his friend Spike Jonze, was like, Spike, I don't know how to make this movie, but you know, your crazy mind, you might be able to figure it out. And Spike read it, Spike didn't like it. And then 10 years later, the script came back to David, and David was finishing up Zodiac, and on Zodiac we were using a lot of new digital technology. And he was like, I think we might be there. I think I could make that movie now. I think technology has finally caught up. But again, it was a story that was so unique, was steeped in such richness, it was okay. But we're just writing, you know, popcorn fodder. It's usually easier to just start with something new than dredge up something old. So that's why a lot of those things get lost. You'll hear about things that are stuck in turnaround, or you'll hear about development hell. That's that kind of stuff where it's like, okay, how do we develop this thing more to make it something that people will like now? Do we make the language youthful? Do we give it a more diverse cast? Do we give it a less diverse cast? Like, what's popular? What's unpopular? You know, do we go through and remove the R word? Oh wait, I just saw an article, the R word's back. We can say retard again. Like, it's all of that. Like, what are you trying to keep up with? Versus, let me just make a new comedy that has nothing to do with that other project. Now I don't have to pay those other filmmakers. I don't owe anything to that other thing because I'm starting fresh. So that's kind of what happens. That's why stories and movies get shelved and get lost. Anything else? Yeah.
The model that you're talking about,
Mhm.
making the film, there must be, as you're talking to writers, what kind of elements go into a story for that kind of film, and what kind of elements you don't want to see them to make it fit that?
Sure. So the truth is, we can do anything for any amount of money. It just takes a really creative mind. And what has shifted in that, so I don't use AI for anything. I'm not anti-AI, I just don't use it for anything. But there's a lot of special effects techniques that AI is really good at that's not taking a job from anybody because it was already done by a computer. It was just done by a person hit a computer button, and now there's one less person hitting a button that can create a lot of really good things. There are great car chases and flips and crashes made with miniatures. Like, there's a lot of really good stuff you can do. So I would say, write the best movie that you can write with whatever elements it has, and then find filmmakers, and then have the filmmakers, or if you're the filmmaker, then you need to decide, what can I do, right? So when I'm writing something, I think about what I own, what I know how to do, what I have access to. That's where I usually start from. But like the script I'm talking about right now, I'm writing a script that's set in Panama about, you know, a Marine and all this other stuff. And then I was talking to someone, they're like, oh, we can probably get you a couple flyovers, the canal and stuff, and fly you in a helicopter over the jungle. I'm like, great, I'm putting that shot in my film. I don't know where, but I'm putting that shot in my film. But the reality is I've written a contained action thriller set in the jungle. I make it bigger by setting it in Panama. I make it bigger by talking about international espionage. I make it bigger by, right? So you find ways to make it bigger. That's where being creative comes in. It's not about what you can and cannot do technically. It's what you can and cannot think of how to do creatively that really will hold you back. At some point, you're right, you've got to change it. A friend of mine, Jamie Vanderbilt, wrote a film called The Losers. And originally it was an $80 million film, it was written for Peter Berg to direct. And Peter Berg wasn't going to do it anymore. And so they're like, okay, what are we going to do with this movie? And this guy, Sylvan White, got to do the movie. They're not giving Sylvan White $80 million. So they called Jamie and they said, we're going to give Sylvan 40. We need you to rewrite this for $40 million. And so he went in and he changed a couple of set pieces. But wait until somebody tells you, right? When I'm working with writers whose projects I'm adapting, I always tell them, let me be the one to censor you. Like, give me an opportunity to be like, man, I don't know how to make that happen, before you just didn't give me the idea to see your great creative idea. Because I think from a writer, where the impetus comes from, there's such an organic beauty to how things are made. It's better to treat it like a tree and trim from the outside as opposed to just hack it off and say, what do we do with what we have left? So I would always say, just write what you want to write. Don't worry about genre, don't worry about style. You know, there are trends. Right now, believe it or not, horror's not very popular. Comedy's not very popular. Drama's a little bit more popular than it kind of ever is. But right now, people want action. Action is easy and people want that. But again, like, by the time you're done writing it, who knows what'll currently be popular? And then by the time you actually get your movie made and get your movie out, who knows what'll be popular? So that's why I'm saying, make sure, this is what I started with, right? Make sure it's something you're really passionate about. Because you're going to be pounding the pavement and knocking on people's doors and pushing that story. And you're going to tell them why this story still, right? Not why did you write it in the first place, but why does this story still matter? Why is it still gerund to today's population, to today's audiences, to today's conversation? And then find a way to make that work. Yes, sir.
I write short stories and a novel that was presented here, short stories, and I believe they've been reasonably well received, but I've never written a film script. And yet I hear of someone like yourself, a producer, sometimes buying a novel or a short story.
Absolutely.
And they take over and they'll make the script.
Correct.
How do you get from where I am to there?
By going to film festivals. Watching people who are making things and saying, wow, I like what I just saw. Who made that? Because the people at film festivals, they're you, right?
Yeah.
The people that have films in AMC, they might be a bit harder to get to. But the people at film festivals, they don't know how they're making their next movie yet. They may not even know what their next movie's about. So you're at a film festival and you see someone who tells a story in the way that you like, or you like something about the tone, or you like the way they present characters, or you like the themes. And afterwards you say, I really enjoyed that. You know, I'm a writer. I write short stories that have similar themes to what you presented. I'd love to talk to you about my work sometime. Or if you see a film at a film festival and that filmmaker's not there, I guarantee you can find their contact information. Because if they're not that popular, they want everyone to be able to find them. It's only the people that are really popular that don't want to be found. So most people, their email address is out there, their direct phone number is out there, because they want to be found. They want people to reach out to them and be offering them scripts.
Are you suggesting that the likes of me can walk up to the likes of you at a film festival and say, would you read my story?
Absolutely.
Novel?
Absolutely. The only reason it has to be at a film festival is so that you know I'm a person who makes movies, right? Because if you walk up to me at Starbucks, you don't know what I do. But you could walk up to anybody that you know as a filmmaker and say, I really appreciate what you do, or I saw something you did and it was great. I write stuff that's like that. I'd love to share it with you sometime. Would you be open to reading it? And they will absolutely say yes, because we don't know where our next scripts are coming from. Currently, I rewrite for other people. I've had 4 movies made this year that I wrote. I rewrote someone else's movie because they couldn't quite figure it out. I write some of my own stuff, and then people submit to me. And sometimes people submit completed scripts that I don't want to change at all. Sometimes there's just an idea and I think everything else is terrible, and I say, hey, I'll buy your idea from you. And then other times I say, this is great. I think you have a really cool voice. Why don't you partner with me and we'll turn this into something? Now, because you're partnering with me, this one's going to take longer because I'm not paying you and you're not paying me. So this is a passion project, but let's figure that out. But absolutely, that's what filmmakers are doing. And there's a variety of groups, Michelle's a member of a group that has a lot of filmmakers in it. There's a lot of people who know filmmakers, in this city and other cities. It's not, you don't have to be in LA, you don't have to be hanging out in any particular neighborhood. It's just that at film festivals, you are surrounded by people who love film because they've gone out of their way to go watch a bunch of movies made by people they've never heard of, with people they've probably never seen, and most of those movies will never get seen again because they don't sell, they don't get distribution, right? So that's your opportunity to see these new voices, and you're a new voice. So that's a great place to meet people. And there's probably no less than 50 film festivals in the LA basin alone. So that would be my suggestion.
Boy, have I got a novel for you.
I bet.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
What
Yes,
do you
Chris.
think of the Telluride Film Festival?
It's great. It's great. Here's the thing. Unfortunately, there's like 3 festivals that matter anymore, and I don't even know if there's 3. Like, you'll notice the LA Film Festival died in 2015, and it's because nobody wanted to come to LA to go to a film festival.
Right.
And all the people who lived here were like, oh, I'll see it later, I'll just ask for a screener. And so nobody came here, right? Tribeca's dead, Sundance is dead. Sundance was considering moving to Cincinnati, Ohio. That tells you how dead Sundance is,
That's bad.
right? There are festivals, but the problem is there are so many festivals. This is the flip side of there being so many festivals. Getting into a festival and winning a festival doesn't mean anything. I just saw a film I was asked to produce over 50 laurels. This film has over 50 laurels for best movie, best script, best actress. It is unwatchable. It is unwatchable. But somebody somewhere liked it enough. And so it got into Mama's Backyard Festival and it won an award, and there you go. And so, again, I'm really happy that those festivals are there because I want anybody who wants to make a movie, even if it's unwatchable, I love that they have a chance to make a movie. And I love that they have a chance to share it with people. And I hope that they keep scrapping and working until they make a good movie that gets somewhere.
Right.
But getting into a festival doesn't mean what it used to mean. And winning at a festival doesn't even mean. I had a nominated for the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance in 2019. Barely sold that film. Had another film nominated for the Grand Jury Prize at South by Southwest. Barely sold that film. Sold it, but barely. I've had other films that didn't get into any major festivals sell like hotcakes. People can't wait to watch it, right? It's not the indicator that it once was, but it's still a wonderful place to meet other filmmakers, to meet other writers, to meet other people.
So what are the 3?
Cannes, TIFF, and Berlin are still important. TIFF is becoming more important. Next year they're launching a market. And I think that market is probably going to kill AFM. AFM is the longest running North American film market. It's kind of important. They made a mistake and they went to Vegas last year, which really pissed a lot of people off. The festival did not go well. The market didn't go well. It wasn't well attended. And the actually being there was not very good. It'll be back in LA this year. But here's why I think AFM is going to die. You have TIFF, which runs in September, which now has a market, which means people will go to that market trying to sell films. AFM's in November. It means you're basically going to get the leftovers that didn't sell at TIFF, whatever new came out in October and maybe the first week in November. So if they don't move to a different time of year, I don't really know why they remain valuable, because TIFF is in North America also.
I understand there's some interest in Santa Barbara.
The festival?
Yeah.
It's a great festival, but there are no, when I'm talking about a festival, so there are festivals who will take wonderful care of you as a filmmaker. They will fly you in, they will put you up, they will make you feel wonderful. Those are great festivals. What I'm specifically talking about in this conversation is the business of selling or getting a job or getting hired or getting something like that. Buyers aren't going to those festivals and seeing films. And so it's really hard. So if you do well there, you can say, hey, I did well at this festival. That's a well-attended festival and has smart programmers. That can be super helpful. but it's not like you're going to be there and meet people who are necessarily going to help you. That's more what I mean. But yeah, it's a great fest. Santa Barbara's great. I mean, for short films, Holly Shorts is great. Palm Springs is great, right? It's really fun. Go out there, meet people. There's a lot of fun people. They have good mixers that are not crazy wild parties. They're a place to meet people and talk and chat. And so there's a lot of really, I said, there's a lot of great festivals in the LA Basin to attend and meet filmmakers at, just not to like be excited you got your film into.